consider this a professional courtesy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker, licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. Welcome back to it, folks. It's been a little while since last we spoke. I took last week off. It was a mix of just being too dang busy and having just lots of stuff to do, and I needed to take a breather, frankly, from a couple of things. And unfortunately, the show ended up being what took the hit. Apologies. Thanks for those of you who reached out to make sure I was still breathing. It's been an interesting one. We've got a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. We have got data all over the place. California is kind of going to be our focus for today's show. And it's really a tale of two states. I mean, we come at it from two different angles. We'll cover that probably before and after the break. But before we jump into that, let me remind everyone how to get in contact with me. The best way to reach out is through the website. And the website for the show is therebelbroker.com. From there, you can send along any ideas, suggestions, observations, or questions that you might have. Happy to field them, share my thoughts, what have you. While you're there, you can also join the Rebel Underground, which is a more select group of aficionados of the show who want to hear a little bit more from me. Most of the folks in that group would probably complain they don't hear from me enough. Frankly, I just don't pester people. That's about to change. I know I keep saying that, but honestly, it is about to change. One of my goals for 2018 was to be adding more hot and juicy content to that specific group of folks. So fasten your seatbelt. It will come, I promise. And then the other thing you can do while you're there is scroll to the very tippy top of the page. There'll be a red button titled Take the Survey to Support the Show. Go ahead and click that thing. You're going to do two wonderful things. You're going to help support the show. You'll be given a little bit of a survey. You'll be asked to use an email address to identify yourself a couple of times. Please make sure to use one that you use on a regular basis, because in addition to you helping out the show by filling out that demographic survey, you're also putting yourself in the drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card. Now, we give these things out every month, and lo and behold, we are at the beginning of yet another month. So within the next week, I will be doing the drawing. It won't be before Friday, though. I never do them in the middle of the week. I usually do them on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday whenever I find time to sit down and do it. So my suggestion would be head on over to therebelbroker.com, click the big red button, go through the process if you haven't already. Before 5 p.m. Pacific time on Friday, because that's the earliest I will do it, and get yourself in the drawing for this month's Amazon gift card. Good luck to those of you who have yet to win, and congrats to all those folks who've won the hundreds of dollars that we've given out so far. Look forward to crowning a new winner sometime in the next week. Okay. So let's talk a little ground truth first, because there's a few things that have been going on. One of the other things that I did over the last week, I've suggested you all do this too, regardless of what you do, right? So me as a real estate guy, obviously I want to do this maybe for a different set of reasons than you do. But if you're an investor, if you're whatever you are, I think every year it's important to sit back, try to take the blinders off, and analyze what you're doing and what's working and what's not working. Now, if you're someone who's trying to work for yourself, if you're an entrepreneur and you're spending money in order to try to make it in the business, whatever that means, right? It could mean advertising. It could mean cost of goods, whatever. It's good to take a step back, not assume the way you're doing it right now is the most efficient way to do it, and try to find more efficient ways to go. So that was kind of one of my mantras. That was one of my resolutions for 2018. And it's frankly, it's on my list every year. And I had kind of made some notes in January, and last week I thought, we're coming to the end of February and I haven't really buckled down on this one. So I finally did it. And actually, it was probably before last week got started. It was probably Friday, the week before last, that I kind of kicked this into gear and decided to go back into business growth mode. Now, for a lot of you who've been listening for a while, you know that this show was originally not originally, but way back in the early days, it was 3 hours once a week. Then it went to live. once a week. Then it went to 5 days a week. And then over the last few months, it has gone to 3 times a week. And sometimes I'll miss a week. And the reason for that is I was spending a lot more time doing this show than building my business. So I've rededicated myself to the building of my business, and I'm bringing you along for that ride. And if this show gets on a paying basis, it'll clearly take up more of my time. But in the interim, got to pay the bills. So I'm going to be focusing on the real estate stuff, and decided to do a hard and deep analysis of what I was spending, where I was spending it, and what bang for the buck I was getting out of it. And started doing a whole bunch of new stuff that has actually been very productive. Since last we spoke, I've been embracing a lot of different methods of reaching out to folks who might be interested in real estate services. But what's really super interesting about this is the layout or the demographics of the people that are reaching out to me. One thing that I've started out there is reaching out to buyers. And I've normally been a guy who reaches out more to listers. I prefer doing listings. I like that process. It's usually a little bit easier, particularly in a market like we have now, where there's so many buyers per transaction or per home that's listed. But I've also reached out now to try to embrace bringing more buyers into the equation. And I was stunned by the flood of contacts. So if I was to go and log on to my contact management software, now all of my ads are linked to my content management system. So when an ad gets clicked on and someone provides their name and address and phone number, it gets automatically entered into my contact management software. And then in a note, it shows me where it came from, what ad they clicked on, all that kind of stuff. So I get all the data I need so I can track where the lead comes from. Well, as I said, I just started this new advertising a little over a week and 4 days ago. And I've so far gotten somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 30 clicks where folks provided information. And out of those, 2 of them had bad email addresses. So they were bad leads, right? Whatever. Either someone made a typing error or someone just put in a fake address for whatever reason. Which is actually kind of amazing. And the rest of them are all folks that are looking to buy. I just got off the phone before I sat down to do this show with someone who wants to buy a home here in my market in the Morgan Hill area. Started up a search. They want to spend up to $850,000, and they are what we would call in the bread and butter zone. They want a 3+ bedroom, 2+ bath. You know, the thing every buyer wants at a minimum. 0 active listings in Morgan Hill for a home meeting that description right now. So that's the picture I'm painting. Now, the discussion of whether or not it's a quote unquote hot market is moot, because it's there's just nothing to sell. The inventory just isn't there. So regardless of how many people are out there to buy, it's a hot market because there just isn't enough inventory. This inventory problem is ridiculous. Now, of course, this is just the truth where I sit right now. And this is what I'm seeing. And literally, I ran this search, 40 minutes ago while I was on the phone with a client. And the dichotomy here of how many people are looking to buy versus how many homes there are in the market is just mind-boggling. Even when I go out and do searches on brand new construction, I'm having difficulty finding anything. So that's kind of the state of how things are, right? And take into account all the things we've talked about relating to the Bay Area. Remember, we talked a few shows back about how many people are leaving the Bay Area. How if you were renting a truck, if you were renting a moving truck here in San Jose in the Silicon Valley area, and you were going to Las Vegas, it was going to cost you $2,000 to move out of California, to move out of the Bay Area to Las Vegas. If you're going from Las Vegas to the Bay Area, it was only going to cost you $200 because there's tons of folks looking to get trucks in the Silicon Valley area. So the demand for trucks is super high here. So if you want to move out of the Bay Area, it's costing you way more than moving into the Bay Area. That's a classic supply and demand problem right there. And some of the stuff we're going to segue into today relating to other things in the marketplace, other signs and symptoms of the market, are really painting a bizarre picture. Whether you're a consumer or you're an investor, It's just odd, and frankly, I'm not sure where to go with it. So let's take one of the first ones I came across this last week. The headline is Greg Gutfeld slams liberal-run state ranked dead last in quality of life. Guess which one it is. Now, obviously, there's a political bent to this one, but let's ignore that, right? What we do in terms of investing has nothing to do with politics, right? I suppose if it's politics that alienate one group or another, that's important. But what we're looking at here as at its core is a report from U.S. News and World Reports, which is what this fella, whoever, I'm not even sure where he's from. I guess he's a Fox News guy, Greg Gutfeld, was referring to this particular report. Now, what's interesting is they break it down into quite a few different things here, but it breaks it down into what is the quality of life. And what we got here is the study actually ranked California overall as the 32nd best state overall. Now, still in the lower portion of the spectrum, but on the metric for quality of life, California measured dead last behind New Jersey and Indiana. Now, I have nothing horrible to say about Indiana. I'm not sure I've ever been to Indiana. Can't say I have. I may have driven through on my way somewhere else. If you live in Indiana and love it, congratulations. However, I have been to New Jersey. And granted, my experience was in the 90s. Maybe things were very much different. But for me, it was the overwhelming odor of beer and toxic waste was kind of what hit me. I jet skied for the very first time in the waterways in New Jersey. And when I fell out, I stood on the bottom. It was only about knee deep. And when I brought my feet back up, they felt like they were burning. And there was this green iridescent muck attached to my feet. I had to zip back to where I rented the jet ski and rinse it off, and it had literally bleached my skin. So that's my New Jersey experience. But let's also understand how else we've come to know New Jersey. New Jersey a few years ago, or last year, I think, was the number one most moved away from place in the United States. It was tough to get trucks in that case to move out of New Jersey. Easy to get trucks to New Jersey. New Jersey is also was at that time one of the most heavily taxed states. So if you were a resident of New Jersey, you were just oppressively taxed. So not a lot of great reasons to be in New Jersey. And for California, in quality of life, to measure behind New Jersey is definitely a huge hurdle to jump. Now, if you love New Jersey, again, I apologize. This is the opinion of an outsider who only managed to spend a few weeks there. But boy, it didn't hit my list of places I want to go back to. On this, according to this commenter, California scored low for one simple reason. It's impossible to live there unless you are super rich or homeless. So maybe Californians leaving California, they're the real dreamers. But anyone who's been to LA knows the ugly truth. It's turned into a post-apocalyptic wasteland with 55,000 homeless in that county alone. Massive encampments have enveloped Skid Row under overpasses and streets nearby. San Francisco isn't much better, spending millions last year on cleaning up human waste left on the streets left by the homeless. Now, as somebody who lives in the Bay Area, I find myself in San Francisco relatively frequently, or I'll be dealing with folks who are in San Francisco. And that's actually true. This whole you got to step over human waste in the street thing is very common. We've talked a lot about other dynamics going on where 40% of the people surveyed said they wanted to move out of Silicon Valley. I'm not sure what the numbers are for Southern California, but in general, there is this desire to get out of California. I'll, of course, in the show notes, I will share links to both the article that quoted this TV commentator, but then also to the actual survey itself, the best states U.S. News report. But if you scroll down, California is dead last, 44th for natural environment, 47th for social environment, but number 50 overall. If we click on their thing and do the about stuff here, overall rank out of 50 is 32. Quality of life is 50. Fiscal stability is 43. Crime and corrections is 28. Infrastructure is 38. Opportunity is 46. So in the bottom 5 in opportunity. In terms of economy, it's number 4. In terms of education, it's number 26. In terms of healthcare, it's number 11. Just absolutely nuts. But think about this place. Think about how much it costs to live here. And you just have to start wondering, how sustainable is that? If this is how folks feel about it, if this is the essence of what people take away from living in California, you have to wonder how that fits in with people making this a destination to live. Because here it is. Here's on the flip side. Remember, we were talking about how this was a tale of two states. Southern California home prices in January rose at their fastest pace in 44 months. So Southern California's median home price in January of 2018 was $507,000. In 2009, it was $247,000. In July of 2007, it was $505,000. So it's now higher than the peak of the downturn, or peak of the peak before the downturn. And the graph seems to show this is just continuing to go. Now, it looks like it might be slowing in rate of increase a little bit, but still showing these crazy increases. Next, an article from Zero Hedge, which always is a little bit, borderline for me, but I think this is an interesting one. Quote, "We don't belong here anymore," end quote. "Even landlords are fleeing the Bay Area." Now, we are those people, right? We aspire to be landlords. Why are landlords fleeing the Bay Area? According to this article, quote, "Peter Thiel and his band of libertarian-leaning Silicon Valley types aren't the only ones scrambling to leave the Bay Area. As we've noted time and time again, staggering economic inequality is a daily fact of life in the area surrounding San Francisco, largely because rapidly growing home valuations have left couples earning as much as $500,000 a year feeling like they're being steadily priced out. And while we've previously covered the exodus of renters to low-cost states like Texas, in a report published Saturday, the East Bay Times explores an even more troubling trend. Landlords are increasingly taking the cue from their tenants and joining the exodus. After all, with 1 in 4 U.S. homes sold during 2017 going for more than $500,000 above their asking, particularly in hot real estate markets like San Francisco, where buyers battling for the highest bid have begun relying on clauses that will automatically and incrementally raise their bids until they either emerge victorious or reach a predetermined ceiling. For at least the last 9 months, the Bay Area has led the country in the number of departing residents, as everybody who isn't a tech worker, including essential civil servants like police and firefighters, begins to feel like a secondary servile class. One landlord said several of his tenants asked if they could move with him when he announced he was selling the building and departing for Colorado. Tony Hicks moved to San Jose in 1991, but he's had enough. Hicks told his 11 tenants he would soon place the 3 homes he owns on the market. He expected disappointment. Instead, most wanted to move with him to Colorado. It didn't take them long, Hicks said. "I was surprised." Here's another one. Dan Harvey, 60. "I've been thinking about this for a long time." He's a retiree who lives off of his rentals. He's a retired engineer. "The groundswell to leave Silicon Valley, the place of fortunes, world-changing tech, and $2,500 a month garage apartments, has been building for at least the last 9 months. The San Francisco metro area has led the nation in the number of residents moving out, according to a survey by online brokerage Redfin. The landlord and tenants came together through Hicks rental ads on Craigslist and the newspaper over the last 2 decades. Few say they could afford to go it alone in the sky-high housing market in San Jose, where a typical 2-bedroom rents for about $2,500 a month, far more than what they pay Hicks." Let's see. Anything else sexy here? 1/4 of residents in their 20s and 30s say they are struggling to afford their housing. High taxes, cost of living, quality of life, from traffic to homelessness, politics, and high housing prices. For many long-term residents, she said, they feel like they don't belong here anymore. Vaulting real estate prices added incentive. He kept up on tax laws that could maximize the return on his property. Selling his San Jose rental houses and buying new properties with the proceeds would allow him to defer taxes. It's a great financial move, he said. So lots of interesting things happening here. It's interesting that these properties are changing hands, but it also fits in directly with what we've been talking about on this show for a while. Now, we're going to come back in just a second and recap what we talked about in the past and talk about why this is a really smart move for a lot of investors. And if you own, why it probably is a smart move right now. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909. Welcome back, everyone. We're talking about a tale of two states. One state, but two tales. A tale, one that we just kind of covered, that talks about all the folks that are leaving, that want out, that don't want to have anything more to do with it. The fact that it's going to cost you a ton of money to rent a truck here to get the hell out of town because they're so in demand. There is such a demand for them. There aren't enough trucks. But if you're coming the other way, if you're moving to California from just about anywhere else, they're practically going to pay you to take the truck into the state so they can then rent it out for the return trip. It'll cost people at least $2,000. But why is this? So given all this, how do we feel about the future of California? Is California doomed? Probably not. And if it is doomed, it's going to be the longest, most drawn out death we've ever seen. Unless we see some dramatic, hideous, horrendous move that just alienates the majority of the population. Is that possible? Yeah. We see some loony ideas come up in Sacramento that really get a lot of people motivated. We talked about one a while back. God, what was that one? I actually had people call me and say, I want to find out what I could get for my house. This was probably a year ago? God, I can't believe I can't remember what the heck that was. It was a law someone was talking about. It was the California version of socialized medicine, I think. And the amount of tax that was going to be required was ridiculous. It was basically going to be doubling your state income tax in order for this to work out financially, even have any hope of working out. And I had folks calling me, telling me, if this thing passes, I need to sell my house and I need to sell it fast. And they wanted to just bail. They were ready to get out. So what does that tell us? Does that tell us that there is a very brittle population out there in California where if we got some sort of crazy, and what would it be, right? Obviously doubling the state income tax would be a thing, right? But what's the scope of a change that could push it over the edge? Is it 50% increase in state taxes? 25% increase? The amount of money California is spending. Now, for those of you who don't live in California, you may not know that California just issued a whole bunch more bonds. Now, what's interesting is they're putting advertisements for these bonds on the radio. In case you guys don't know what that is, that's borrowing money. That's the state borrowing money because they need cash. That should scare the hell out of everybody. That at this point, with the way real estate's going, with how much people are paying, with the amount of taxes, the amount of increased property taxes that are going to the state, the fact that the state now needs to sell bonds to raise more money should scare the crap out of everybody. Because if there's another big downturn and they've sold out and they've put these bonds out in the world and borrowed all this money, you think California was in trouble last time, and California was. It's going to be 10 times worse if something bad happens again. I don't think there's any question that something bad's going to happen, but the state sure isn't proceeding as if it's learned its lesson from last time and is putting some money away in case bad things happen. So where does that leave us, right? It really comes down to you. What do you believe? Do you believe that California is destined for bad things? And I think the answer is yes. It's just a question of when, and then a question of how bad. But will California recover? Yeah. The truth is California offers too many unique things. And there is a point at which people say it is no longer worth all the good things about California to put up with all the bad things about California. There is that point. There is that tipping point. I'm almost there. I know a lot of people who are almost there. And here's the other thing. There's another conversation I had over the last week. Now, I happen to be lucky enough to know someone who is very good friends with an executive level person at a very large high-tech company here in Silicon Valley. If I was to tell you the name, no question you'd know the company I'm talking about. I don't care if you're a plumber or a pilot or what, you would know the name of this company. And this is a very high person. This is someone who makes like decisions for the company that happen globally. This is the big stuff, right? And in a conversation with this person and a couple of other folks, the topic came up of the mass exodus out of California. And they mentioned, yeah, we're realizing that if we simply announce we're leaving California, there would be a huge problem. But we're absolutely looking at building facilities in other parts of the country, migrating certain services away from being done in California. And we're kind of testing the waters with people to find out how they'd feel about keeping the exact same pay that they get now, but being moved to another state. And that's what I'm hearing from a lot of different folks, whether the companies are large or small, is that they're for their key people, they're offering them the exact same wage they're paying them now, but because they'd be living in this lower cost state to do business, it makes sense for them to pay them this wage that in this new location is like a king's ransom. And they're getting almost universal acceptance of the concept in terms of people saying, yeah, if you were to offer me that, I would go. A lot of people don't realize Apple did this. Apple did this back in the 90s, the last time there was a big draw for this. And they moved all of their technical support crews out to Austin, Texas, back in the early 1990s. So this isn't an unheard of thing. My understanding from folks in the know that conversation back with Apple actually didn't start with just moving the tech support group out there. It was about moving the headquarters out there, and it got the kibosh. And part of the thing that seemed to happen there was they got a lot of concessions from Cupertino, California, where they're currently located, that made it financially interesting for them to remain. But anyway, that's beside the point. The point being, there are giant players in the economic landscape of California that are eyeing the exit as well. So where does that leave us? It could lead us to a place where things get very unattractive for a very long time. Then Sacramento at some point realizes they're hosed, and they start creating incentives and stuff for businesses to move back. So I can see that happening, but a lot of us need to figure out the more proximal things that are going to happen. So for my money, and this is what I've been suggesting for a while, what in terms of trying to answer the question I asked before we went on the break, what do we do about it as investors? Well, if you're an investor, don't get sucked, and you don't own anything in California, don't get sucked into this idea that you're missing something by not being in California. I have news for you. You already missed it. You needed to be here in 2009, 2010, 2011. If you bought then, you'd be a happy camper. You didn't. You missed it. It's done. It makes no sense to purchase properties right now in California unless you're convinced there is still a whole lot of high end to experience in appreciation. But if you're an appreciation only investor, I still argue this is not the place to go. Now, we talk about return on investment frequently. As soon as new reports come out that talk about what regions are getting the highest return on investment, we cover it because that's awesome information to have. If I owned one home that I could sell for $1.5 million in California, that was an investment property, there is no way I would continue to own that property. I would sell that sucker in a heartbeat, and I'd buy 10 properties across the country in higher return on investment areas and get more money for my dollars in return than what I'm getting in California. Remember, California, in terms of return on investment lists, has come in at the end of every list we've been talking about for over 2 years. With in some cases, close to zero or negative return on investment. And in order for it to be positive cash flow, you almost completely have to pay cash. That means you have to have wrapped up hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, potentially up to $1 million, before you're seeing positive cash flow, because we're not seeing rents going up at the same rate we're seeing home prices going up. So that gap prevents you from being able to be positive cash flow at a reasonable down payment level. At a 20% down payment level, you're not in positive cash flow in here if you're buying an investment property. Unless you're buying something super distressed, and even then, the super distressed properties are going at a way bloated price when you take into account what it's going to take to make that place livable or rentable. So what's my suggestion? If you're not here, don't come here. Take your money somewhere else. Go look at some of the other places we've talked about, like Charlotte, North Carolina, or we had a guest on a couple of weeks ago that was really hot on Kentucky. We've had all kinds of folks in from Memphis and all kinds of different cities that are showing great return on investment, where you can jump in and buy a property and with very little effort, get it going and get it to be positive cash flow for you. So do that. Instead of having all this money wrapped up in California real estate, go out and do that. If you already own property in real estate, take advantage of the fact that we're on a high. Now, are we at the tippy top of the high? I don't know. But from what I'm seeing, I sure do feel like we're close. So my suggestion would be liquidate. Go purchase somewhere else in a market that's likely to give you better returns. Hold on to it and enjoy the ride. And instead of having all your money wrapped up in one property, you can have your money wrapped up in a dozen properties where if one of them suddenly goes vacant, your cash flow doesn't end, right? We've talked about this before. So yeah, there it is. That's kind of California in a nutshell. We've got a ton of negatives. We've got really bad news relating to California. But just because inventory is so low, like I said, for that 3-bedroom, 2-bath home that everybody wants, there is not a single one available in Morgan Hill for under $850,000, for a list price of under $850,000. That is the meat and potatoes. The last property that was that kind of a property in the area of Morgan Hill just went pending. It was listed at $750,000, I think, probably went for $810,000. If I'm going to ballpark it, I don't know yet because escrow hasn't closed and it's not my transaction. But that's the reality that we live in. So I don't see how that makes a lot of sense in terms of folks sticking with this market. And that's independent of what you think is going to happen with the marketplace. All right, folks, one other little tidbit of information. We already talked about the investor part. Construction spending mostly unchanged in January. I found this one a little bit concerning just because I would have liked to see more growth. So we're not seeing the level of ramp up in construction, but not yet depressing news. We'll see how things go as we move further into the year. Particularly the February and March numbers will be interesting to check out. But obviously we won't have those for a little while. All right, everyone. Thanks again for listening to my ramblings on the subject of real estate. I hope you get something positive out of it. The goal is always to leave more value on the table for you than time you invest. Hope we've achieved that today. Thanks again for listening, everyone. I'll talk to y'all next time.